everybody, and welcome to this In Conversation Masterclass of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm the founder of the Learning and Organizational Development Roundtable, under the aegis of which we created the Women Leadership Forum of Asia about 8 years ago. And we're very excited to bring you one more of our In Conversation Masterclasses with 50 and out today. So first of all, congratulations for joining us and deciding to spend the latter half of your Tuesday afternoon listening to a very poignant but a very important story here today. The best part is that this story is going to be related by the person whose story it is. And so it's the authentic journey of somebody who, as you see, will inspire many new ideas and many new thoughts, perhaps more compassion, perhaps more empathy for all that we call the diversity and inclusion movement across our organizations. So I'm going to start at the start. I will get Sunit to help me get our deck up so that I can, for those of you joining us for the first time, take you through the story and the journey called the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. So we created the Women Leadership Forum of Asia about 8 years ago, as I was mentioning, and I'm going to ask Sunit to get our deck up so that we can try and share with you the purpose of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. And of course, we'll try and take you through some more details on the Women Leadership Forum of Asia, D&I Academy, and some of the programs that you can look forward to. All right, great. So it's up again, and I'm going to try and take you through what we have here. All right. Give us only a second. We're going to try and get this deck up for you. Can you try and share the deck? Okay, keep moving it at your end. Move it forward. All right, and so like I said about the WLFA, this is a forum that we created under the aegis of the Learning and OD Roundtable. The beauty of this forum is that it inspires a lot of individuals, organizations across business, across academia, the government, NGOs, and a whole lot of organizations that we've worked with through the past 8 years, inspiring them to be able to create cultures of diversity and inclusion. And while it's called the Women Leadership Forum of Asia, we actually help organizations integrate all kinds of diversities, multi-generations, persons with disabilities, LGBTQ community, socio-cognitive diversity, and of course, gender. Move forward. Here are the absolutely outstanding governing council members that are wind below our wings. Adil Malia, from the firm, Dr. Akhil Basrai. Many of these people you probably already know. They're very illustrious, very iconic HR people, and they're on our governing council directing a whole lot of good work that this forum ends up sort of putting out. Rajesh Padmanabhan of Talavi, Rajesh Kamath of Chanakya Consulting, Manu Vadwa of Sony Pictures, Rajeshwar Upadhyay of Par Excellence, and also from the Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence, and me, Dr. Sujaya Banerjee, and I'm the CEO of Capstone People Consulting. Move forward. Big announcement to make, because we did start work in the space last year, especially as a whole lot of women suffered from job losses during the COVID lockdown, and we started a whole lot of work around a returnee program, boot camps for women who were returning to jobs after a career break, helping women to be able to seek employment. And now this is formalized into a full-fledged D&I sort of recruitment hiring platform called Diversity Balance Hiring Solutions. This is a go-to place for all of you who are looking for diverse talent and cannot find it. Oftentimes, the challenge is the demand supply situation in terms of finding the right kind of diverse talent. So for those of you who are looking to find the right talent to come in on board, reach out to us at the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. I must say this got created out of public demand, out of organizations and members reaching out, asking for help to be able to find the right kind of diverse talent. So besides helping you with hiring solutions, the Diversity Balance Hiring Solutions also does work in the space of coaching and sensitization, coaching for the diverse talent, sensitization for your organization to integrate the diverse talent, very active returnee programs which we can organize and run for you, and boot camps for group hiring that you may want to explore. We've had some very, very great success stories in the space, so do reach out to our teams. Those of you interested in knowing more about this, put it out on the chat and we'll have the Women Leadership Forum of Asia volunteers reach out to you to be able to understand what you need. Move forward. The D&I Practitioner Certification Program, which comes up in the last quarter of the year. This is a not to miss, and do register for those of you who have D&I responsibilities or who'd like to know more about diversity and inclusion, have passion perhaps and not enough exposure and experience, but are entrusted with responsibilities of diversity and inclusion within your own organizations. Reach out to us. This is your perfect solution, the D&I Practitioner Certification Program, coming up in the last quarter of this year. Move forward. The WLFA D&I Academy, this has been sort of active for almost the last 18 months, and it's been doing some outstanding work. Move forward. I'm going to very quickly tell you the kind of work that the D&I Academy has been doing. We're doing work in the area of millennials and multi-generations within organizations so that you're able to create collaborations across generations. We have 4, 5 generations sometimes working together within organizations. Other than talking about this, there's very little understanding around age cohorts and about the magic that you can create by creating understanding rather than misunderstanding across generations. So collaboration across generations and the multi-generations and millennial labs are very popular programs that the D&I Academy runs for various organizations. Leadership and inclusion is a very solid offering, and we do this work for a lot of organizations. You should reach out if you want to create and help integrate diverse talent, create cultures of inclusion by being able to have people managers go through Lead with Inclusion programs to shift mindsets and help you build diverse and inclusive cultures rather than only run programs. The gender development and inclusion space has a whole lot of work. Again, a lot of it in the space of being able to create the kind of diverse, inclusive cultures that you need within the organization to include and give women and their careers momentum within the organization. Lots of sensitization programs in the area of gender, LGBTQ, multi-generations, and the rest, all very impactful, ongoing dialogues and conversations inside organizations. Move forward. We do lots of work, and especially in the context of the topic that we're here to be able to talk about today, lots of work in the space of the LGBTQ space. Besides the sensitization that I just spoke about, there are the audits which lead to some very solid and useful action in the D&I space, in the LGBTQ integration space. And also for those of you who are theater enthusiasts, some really outstanding theater interventions. One of them called Come Out, Wherever You Are, which has been extremely popular. And, the D&I Academy has done this for very many organizations. And of course, the second more newer offering called Junaid the Play. And so do reach out should you be interested in our D&I Academy programs. Move forward. With that, the program that we're here, the In Conversation Masterclass that you're all here to be able to attend today. I'm personally very excited and delighted that Raga D'silva agreed to be able to come and share her very poignant, her very important story with all of you here today. I know we just spoke about LGBTQ sensitization, and I know a lot of you perhaps in the audience do work in this space. A lot of your organizations have attempted doing work in this space. By and large, among our various diversities, despite landmark judgments in this space, this remains a space that remains much to be wanted. The LGBT community continues to be exposed to taboos and exposed to stigmas and exposed to embarrassments, as a result of which most of them find it difficult to be able to come out. I think there's been some epiphanous times during the pandemic and during the lockdowns where individuals have gathered the courage to be able to come out. But by and large, there isn't a lot of support in the space. The older generations still remain homophobic at most times. There is high levels of ignorance and non-understanding on the kinds of human beings, people who constitute the LGBTQ community. There is little or no work being done in most organizations in this space. And even for those who are attempting with all good intentionality to be able to integrate this community, more often than not, we end up looking outside and looking for certain kind of job roles that individuals could perform rather than creating cultures inside and comfort inside and psychological safety inside to be able to allow people who are already part of the LGBTQ community, who might already be members of your organization today. So I think with that as the backdrop, I want the audience to be sensitized to the fact that we have here with us our guest here today in conversation is a very senior professional, is extremely accomplished, and I'll take you through her background in just a bit. But it takes so much of courage and even more generosity to be here to be able to share your own story, especially a story where at most part of your life you did not have the courage to be able to own up to your authenticity, and you eventually did. Raga did this at 50, and she did this at 50 after she had already mothered a pair of twins. She was already a mother of two children. I think this calls for actually a huge round of applause for someone to have the courage, the tenacity, the gumption to be able to stand up and own her own authenticity and come out. And today she is a significant evangelist for the LGBTQ movement. She is a significant activist for LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ being treated with empathy and with compassion. And she does that at most times of being able to share her own story. So before we present to you Raga D'silva, and it really is my pleasure and honor to have someone who's an old friend to be presented here today. And like I said, she has dared to be able to come forth and tell her own story. This is going to be more powerful than many, many sensitization sessions. There cannot be anything more powerful than someone from the community standing up to be able to share their own stories. The entire maze of confusion, the entire maze of embarrassment, having to hide who you really are, having to go with societal norms with marriage, having to go with what's expected from society in the form of being able to go forward in confusion with motherhood, and then emerging so triumphant and so spectacularly in your own authenticity. Raga has over 25 years of experience in the creative field and has worked in senior positions in advertising in India and in New Zealand, and has also been the recipient of very many prestigious awards as a South Asian ambassador for diabetes in UK and a social influencer. She has appeared on BBC, Sky TV, Channel 4, ITV, and TVNS, NZ to share her personal story and views to help prevent diabetes. So she's also holds up the cause of diabetes. She's also served on several boards over the years and was the first woman to be elected on the board of the India-New Zealand Business Council. She's currently a trustee on the board of CRY UK and on the D&I Council of Sony Pictures. Raga is the mother of twins and divides her time between London, Mumbai, and New Zealand, and considers all three to be her home. Raga is the author of the book Untold Lies. Her book is now available on Amazon India and in the UK. So those of you interested and inspired must reach out and order a book. A story she wrote down during the lockdown, loosely adapted from her life, is being made into an international feature film by acclaimed filmmaker Onir. Raga was listed amongst top 100 women, Wonder Women in advertising and marketing in 2021. And I think with that, I am absolutely delighted to present to you Raga D'silva. So Raga, welcome.
Thank you.
We're finally here, and this is absolutely a pleasure, honor, and thank you for agreeing to do this for us at the WLFA and for our members and audiences here today.
Wonderful, Sujaya. I'm going to call you Sujaya, although I know you earned that Dr. Sujaya Banerjee title. And
Yeah,
thank you to the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. I think it's an absolute privilege to be here. It's just the way you introduce the whole space, Sujaya, the LGBT space, and the challenges that one faces. I think it is just beautiful. With just
thank you.
that, I can just see hope for all of us.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, I must tell our audiences, Raga, that you and I know each other from several years ago. So, Raga was then Olga and Olga D'silva, and we both worked for the very outstanding Low Lintas and Partners several years ago. And I think we had absolute fun times. I always remember my time at Lintas, which is so much of joy. And I remember at that time, I knew you more as Olga, who was expecting children. I think we knew they were twins, and if I remember right, the last time we met, perhaps a couple of days before you relocated outside the country, I actually passed on my children's baby cots to you, and you decided to sort of have them shipped to New Zealand. And you must know that those were on rotation within Lintas because there were other mothers who had my baby Scots, you know what I mean? So my son and my daughter were now 25 and 23. So all those years ago, we were sharing these baby cots, and Olga was the last recipient of those baby cots. And then you left for New Zealand, and the next thing I know is that so many years later, you're Raga D'silva, you have a new entity. There's just so much that seems to have happened in your life, and I'm not really overwhelmed, but I sort of we spend time catching up over hours to be able to understand all that transpired in the interim, and it's incredibly generous that you've agreed to be able to share it with our audiences here today. So tell us what happened. Yeah, there's a whole shift there from Olga D'silva to Raga D'silva, and then at age 50 you come out and as a lesbian, and come out with a book to be able to talk about your story as well. And this is now such a significant part of your identity. So tell us your story. I think this is important, and it's an important story to be shared. And I'm sure this is going to not just clear many misgivings, misunderstandings, but hopefully create many more insights for more people to have understanding around these journeys. So I'm just going to simply hand over to you. All the airtime and the whole space is yours, and please do share with me and the audiences this transition from Olga D'silva to Raga D'silva, and all that transpired in the interim. I last knew you as a mother of two.
I'm still a mother of twins, Sujaya,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
life happened, as I say, life happened. And I love Bollywood. So those who know me know how much I love Bollywood. I have a huge influence of Bollywood. So I'm going to say, Sujaya, 20 saal baad. Because it's exactly, we've met 20
That's
years
right.
later, and it is
That's
not a
right.
horror story though.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah. And also interesting, I must share, yes, there was Olga and now there is Raga. And that person, Olga, actually, what we call in the community for the trans people, it's a dead name. I'm not trans, I'm a lesbian, but it's a dead name. I don't even know that person anymore. So I am Raga, and there's a story behind it. At the next forum, I will share. But at this forum, we'll keep to this story, and I just take you back. Like just at Lintas, 20 years ago, we're talking 20 years ago, young. I was a mother of twins at that time. But even at that time, this is now we're talking about late 90s. When I was growing up, Sujaya, in the 80s, basically, there was no reference material. There was no frame of reference for the word gay, queer, LGBT. We didn't know. Even in school, I would see that, the boys who were effeminate were always ridiculed and bullied. If we went to a movie and we watched a Bollywood film, there would be bullying, caricaturish. So all that, when you go through life and you have a reference and you feel different. I remember being attracted to girls even when I was very young, but I had no reference, like I say. So at that time, I thought I was abnormal. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was continuously feeling like a misfit. All my life, I felt like that. Then, of course, just a lot of people don't know this about me. When I was in my early 20s, I did get involved with a young woman in India, in Rajasthan, at a film shoot. And we spent a bit of time together, but not knowing that this was regular, normal, acceptable. So after we met, we've had some time together. we went on with our lives. We remained friends for a while. And then I got married to my best friend. I mean, a male best friend. And that's what we did in India, right? You were told that at a certain age you get married, then you procreate, you have children. And it was that. And then at some point, if we don't like something, we make the changes. So in my case, I emigrated because life, at Lintas was wonderful, but it was long hours. So when you are a mother of young children, you don't have much time. So Ravi, my ex-husband, and I, we emigrated, and thanks to that court, that still continued, I think, to have many other homes. It
Yeah.
went to New Zealand with us, but things changed for us. Maybe it was an immigrant life. I don't know what it was. Our marriage started falling apart, and remember that here I was all alone in a new country. You're trying to settle in. You're financially, there is a lot of stress on you. You don't really have friends. You can't call back home and say you're struggling, because at home, back home in India, people think the moment you go out of the country, you're just fully, your closet is full of dollars. So there was really no one to talk to, and the marriage was falling apart at that time. Towards the last final stages, I started looking around New Zealand, where I was living in Wellington at that time, and I saw a lot of people, like same-sex couples, walking hand in hand, or you could just see so many references around. I had a couple of colleagues in the office as well who were in same-sex relationships, and I felt this is different. This is normal. This is something that if the society accepts, you could have a life like this. And keeping that in mind, I wrote a letter to a friend of mine one night, and I said that, my marriage was getting over. And this friend was also ex-Lintas, by the way, very
Hmm.
close friend of mine. And I said to her that my marriage was over. I was having difficulties, and I shared all the difficulties. And I said that I have always been attracted to women. I think New Zealand offers a safe space for me to be myself, and I may start dating a woman. I said that, but I never wanted to share it. So I put that letter away into my closet. I will talk about the closet often through the conversation, Sujaya, because I
Yeah.
think that I have discovered for me that I think Indian closets are the biggest closets in the world.
Oh,
Not only
yeah.
do we keep our jewelry and our money, if we have any, and our clothes, but we keep a lot of secrets, right?
So
So
true.
I kept it away, and my mother, who also was a typical mother who went through everything that she could, and so there were no secrets, right? Even if she tried to hide anything, she found that letter. And one night, as I was putting my children to bed, who were at that time about 3.5, 4 years old, they were actually, yeah, as young as that. All I could see is darkness, somebody standing next to me. All I could feel is, when I opened my eyes, I was singing to them. I saw this shiny blade, and you can smell your mother, right? And I could just smell her presence. And there was this loud noise. And she came towards me saying, I am going to kill you. You've brought shame to this family. And she called me all kinds of names. And she called me a slut and a hoe. And as you cannot even imagine. And I just wondered what was going on for her, because I had not shared anything with anyone. But then she told me about that letter, and she said, "This is it. There is honor. You have brought so much of scandal. Imagine what people will think." And she even called me. Interestingly, she said, "Now should I be calling you Uncle Olga?" Not understanding that just because you have a preference for somebody from the same sex, not understanding that your gender doesn't change. You don't become a man overnight. So these are misinformation that we have even in the community, even now. I'm talking about 20 years later, which I always try and change. But that was very, very traumatic for me. I remember the children waking up. I remember my ex-husband coming from the other room saying, "What the hell is going on?" And somehow we pacified her. There was drama all night, and it went on for many days. Eventually, I told my ex-husband, whether I uh, change who I am as a person or accept who I am, I couldn't live this life anymore. That my marriage was over. That was the first thing. Now, Sujay, you have to remember, coming from India, we still very much, bound by society. Log kya kahenge, right? That was a comment my mother made throughout that time. Log kya kahenge, log kya kahenge. Don't tell people about that you're separating from your husband. Pretend. So we are so scared of even these little things. My mother said to me, "Is your husband an alcoholic? Does he abuse you? Does he not provide for you financially? Is he not a good father?" And I said, "All that is fine." Then she said, "Pretend. You don't have to break up the marriage. Be in the marriage for the sake of the children." So that is what happened, Sujaya. This happened. This whole slowly that Olga became Raga, because that Raga couldn't take that that drama or the trauma or the lies or the denial because somebody else was finding it hard to accept. And I want the audience to understand that no person, whether it's a man or a woman, overnight makes a decision and overnight changes. Because when you have a family, there is a huge amount of responsibility towards your family. I was facing that, confusion in my head. Should I stay in the marriage for my children, or should I leave because my children will have a better life if their mother is happy? And that was, or what will people say? Because you're fed with that information. And so that is what happened in that time that you and I didn't reconnect.
Right, right. I think it's amazing, and I must say that, especially at that time, to have the courage to be able to come out, even though you kind of came out sometime after that, but at that point to be able to even stand, in front of your mother or in front of your parents or with your husband or people close to you, and to be able to admit to what your authenticity really is. Subject to their misunderstanding, subject to their anger, their disappointment, their dismay, all of that you really need to be able to deal with. And I think that is significantly in the way of so many people who don't have the courage to be able to come out. So I'm going to ask you that, you've come out at 50, and you have grown children, they're in their 20s. You have a ex-partner who co-parents the children with you. You have a same-sex partner who lives with you. How are you handling all of this with parents, with employers, or clients, with relatives, with friends? What has this really meant in terms of, essentially your equity with all of these people and your relationships?
I think I have created a beautiful, modern, magical family. And that is my message to a lot of people, saying that you don't run away. Because when you run away, things just follow you until you
Hmm.
stop running. And when you accept yourself, the world accepts you. And it doesn't matter. Those who
Right.
don't accept it, they don't even matter. As long as you accept yourself and your immediate family is all right, I think you can create a space for yourself in the community. And when I left the marriage, of course, we went through a huge amount of, like I say, drama, conflict. Ravi didn't overnight say to me, "Oh wow, now we are separated, so I'm going to love you forever and unconditionally." He didn't say to me when he saw me in a relationship with a same-sex partner, "You have my blessings, go and live your life." It didn't happen like that. It took years and years of working on it because we have children, because we have history. So that's the first thing we did. We worked at it. The children today, as I say, my children are 23 years old, son and a daughter, twins. We brought them up in an environment of love. I always say that they won a lottery. Imagine having three parents who love them unconditionally. Although we are in England and their father lives in India, we've never made them feel that there is mom, and there's no dad. There's always a dad in their life. And it is important for us all to understand that dysfunctions or functional children come from anybody. They don't have to be brought up by a certain set of parents, but they have to be brought up around love. I met Nicola, who's my partner, 14 and a half years ago. So we've been together 15 years. Of course, we've been through ups and downs ourselves, but mostly we've created this family unit, which we hold our head up high, Sujaya. I am not ashamed. I have not been ashamed for 20 years either, but I was scared. There's a difference. I was made to feel shameful. I was made to feel guilty. I was made to feel scared, but I was never ashamed of who I was. I was never ashamed of my family. It is a very different society. See, I've lived in three countries. I've lived with Nicola, my partner, in India. I've lived in New Zealand with her, and I live in London with her. The dynamics are quite same and quite different. It's very
Hmm.
interesting.
Okay.
In New Zealand, where I thought it was a liberal society, right? When I
Hmm.
first started dating women and I first started living my life, and that was a long time after I left my marriage, I was ridiculed and abused by my own Indian community. I remember, I will share this incident. I share this incident quite often. I remember my children being very little, going into a grocery store. And as I was looking for some stuff, I still remember this so vividly, Sujaya. I'm standing there, minding my own business, getting my children a regular snack. From behind, someone screams, "You lesbian," she says. Now, this is when even I haven't accepted the word lesbian. I'm still in the
Hmm.
space of, but she knew
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
reason. She
Yeah.
came in, she pushed me. She pushed me so hard. I'm quite a tiny person.
Mm.
That woman was tinier than me.
Mm.
Everything fell on me. I fell down, and then she kicked me uh, in my stomach. And then she started saying things I couldn't even understand. I was so traumatized. I was so petrified. Children were little. They started crying. So I
Mm.
packed them up. Crowd gathers. Luckily, those days there was no social media. Fortunately, so that my story would
Yeah.
be shared on millions of platforms. And I just packed them up. I ran out, got into my car, went home. I did not leave my home for 7 days. Now, this is about 19 years ago. Do you know that even today, when I walk on the streets, even today, I'm super alert.
Mm.
Even when I'm talking to my best friend or I'm walking with my partner, I'm always alert that somebody is going to come and spit on me, kick me, and call me names.
Mm.
And it happens quite
Mm.
often as well. Whether
Mm.
it's in London, in India, it didn't happen. In
Mm.
India, I think the best way we deal with things like that is we pretend they don't happen.
Mm.
It doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, you're in denial. You live happily ever after. You look at our homes.
Right.
We have so much of abuse and dysfunction in our homes, but we never talk about it. Yeah, there is a Lakshman Rekha. Beyond that, we don't talk. Again,
Right.
it all goes into the closet,
Mm.
skeletons in the closet, right? So it had huge impact on my life. My workplace, which was lovely to me. I mean, I was receiving accolades and awards all the time at my workplace.
Mm.
Suddenly they stopped. Not that I came out and told them
Yeah.
I'm from the community. Nothing was spoken. It was all
Mm.
rumors that spread. And when
Right.
rumors get spread, they are worse than when you come out and tell your story. Because
Right.
rumors create this whole rainbow and flowery.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do, these rumors. But anyway, my workplace got to know, and suddenly, subtle things started happening. When I would walk into the room, suddenly the conversations would stop. So, you're smart enough to know they're talking about you. Invites for, in New Zealand, there's a lot of recreation we do. We go to each other's homes and barbecues and stuff. Those invites stop suddenly. No awards, no accolades, that you forget. That suddenly didn't happen. I was supposed to be promoted to be on the management board. That didn't happen. And I was managing a very large team. I was head of marketing at that time with a large team. My work was given to the team directly. Like I was just totally ostracized. I
Right.
felt it was so uncomfortable for me from this person being a star. I was on television, I was in media talking about my organization, and suddenly I was left out of everything. I left that job. I said I didn't want to work in an environment, whether they admit it or not, I didn't want to work in a homophobic environment. In India, it was interesting. I run a business in India called Speaking
Mm.
Minds. Last 5 years, that other than the last 2 years of lockdown, when our story broke out, when I came out with my book Untold Lies, my story broke out in the media. In Brute India covered us, Humans of Bombay covered us. I still remember, this is now 2019 October, not very long ago either. I remember Nicola and I walking into the office because Nicola and I are co-partners in the business. They were again same thing, hush, silence, people squirming, nobody looking at you. In my own
Mm.
organization, in my own company, people had speculated, but they never came and asked us. But in hindsight, I wish I had come out and said to them, you know what,
Yeah.
I am this, and this. But people, you don't know these things because you don't expect people to behave in certain manner.
Right.
So in that way, my workplace also in India wasn't any better. But friends ghosted us. Interesting. So you ask about, how was the impact on relationships. Some just
Yes.
accepted us for who we are because they've been friends. They love us for the people we are, not basis our sexual orientation. But some totally ghosted us, and it was interesting. Some overcompensated and tried to be more compensating. But the most biggest surprise came from my own family. My
Okay.
family, who I assumed, so I have a dad, we all have paternal and maternal side, right? My maternal side completely, shockingly, coming from Mangalore, small town in Mangalore, embraced me. My dad's side, who had never invited us for anything, because my dad passed away when I was 6 years old. So
Okay.
that family had completely stayed away from us for whatever reason.
Mm.
We just met at some events. They embraced me. They welcomed us. Both they invited Nicola and I for weddings, for events, and to me that is the huge turning point. And that,
Right.
although I take a lot of credit for that because I think I worked at it, but I also think
Mm.
it's a huge credit on my family who come from Mangalore, that they embrace somebody different who they thought is different. I mean, we come from a patriarchal society, man, woman, children, and here's woman, woman, children. And I really thank them so much. Every day I wake up, Sujaya, I'm going to get teary, and I feel gratitude for that. Acceptance is all we need, and
Right.
it's so easy to give.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm going to, Olga, turn this over to this whole space of social taboo that you spoke about, including being sort of attacked and all of that. And despite all these landmark judgments, we still have a whole host of social taboo associated with coming out. What is your advice to anyone within the LGBTQ community who wants to come out, is filled with similar fears of repercussion? What is your advice on them on why they must come out?
Okay, first of all, I think let me just explain about the landmark judgment that you talk about, Section 377. So, those who are watching, they should know that Section 377 was overturned not very long ago, 2.5 years ago. Now, what is it? It's basically it all it does. It allows consensual sex between two adults of the same sex. That's all it does. Previously, even consensual sex between two adults of the same sex was a criminal offense, even if it was in the
Mm,
privacy of your home. So now you
mm,
imagine the kind of fear the community has faced over
yeah.
decades.
Yes.
Okay, and apart from that, there is no, marriage rights. So you can't go and say that I can marry somebody of the same sex and have the privileges that a heterosexual couple, enjoys. So I would actually, I don't advise people to come out. First of all, my whole uh, advocacy in this space, Sujaya, is about
Yes.
creating safe spaces. That we need to make sure that we have safe space, whether it is in our homes, it's with our friends or allies that we call them, or it's with
Right.
the government, or it's through help from friends, family, work, your education system. Once that happens, can I tell you, when we do these coming out stories from India, I have a series that I host on my YouTube channel called Coming Out Stories from India. We've had so many people, we've had about 20 interactions so far. And when they go back, we're talking about the youngest being 23 years old, and we're
Yeah.
talking about somebody in their 50s. Now imagine the
Mm,
time space, right, between them.
yeah.
Even a 23-year-old has told me that at school, they were bullied by their own teachers, they were threatened, they were ridiculed. Now you imagine that's the society we've created, where
Right.
even if you're effeminate, if you look different, seem different, behave like so-called tomboy, if
Yeah.
you're different, then you are ridiculed. So
Yeah.
until that society changes, until at our workplaces we have discrimination policies, we have
Right.
programs of sensitization that you are so kindly doing, or we
Yes.
have we have laws around this, because people only understand laws, sadly, right? That you cannot discriminate, that serious action will be taken, the zero tolerance policy. Until that happens, how can you expect people to come out? I tell
Right.
people, you don't need to come out until you want to come out. I
Right.
want us to reach a stage, Sujaya, that these conversations never happen, that we don't have
Right.
to come out. I don't remember in my heterosexual marriage sitting with my children and saying, hey, guess what? Let's have dinner together. I want to share something. Your dad and I are straight. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
why should we have that conversation? So, if you ask me what is the advice, I think you should only come out when you are ready to come out. You should only come out when you feel safe. Because this world, Sujaya, sadly, is not a very safe place.
right.
Can I add here, during the introduction, when you were introducing, you were talking about how during lockdown
Yeah.
people have come out and you hear more stories. While I agree with you, but I must tell you that Pink News in the UK came out with a statement, a press release during the first lockdown, that if anybody is planning to come out to their parents or their family at this time, assuming it is a safe place, do not come out. Imagine that. You
Mm,
know why?
mm,
Because during lockdown, you were confined to a space with
yeah.
family, and you didn't know how they were going to react.
React. Yeah.
There were a lot of families who ostracize their children, they throw them out of their homes because
Right.
they come out. So, my advice is come out if you feel you want to come out and if you feel safe to come out.
Right. Right. Good point. So come out if you feel safe, and also if you feel you want to come out. So both things important to consider as you want to be able to figure whether you'd like to come out, but a safe space to come out. And I think that's another point Olga seems to be making. Olga, you and I, when we connected, we talked about, a similar kind of experience that, one of my son's friends' family experienced when his father, who was 50, came out at 50. And I remember sharing this conversation with you where I had a very significant moment of insight, because I was talking to my 17-year-old son, whose best friend had just told him that his father had come out, and as a result of which was going to sort of move out of the marriage and be with his same-sex partner. And he had a younger brother. So obviously, this is a family that we've known for some time because of the friendship that their son and my son shared. Both boys were 17 when this happened. And because he came back to be able to tell me about this, I was trying to help my son make meaning out of this. So I wanted to first understand how he was seeing it. And so, in reaction, because we knew the family, I said, "Oh, this must be very difficult." And he said, "Yeah, it's very difficult. It's really very difficult." And so I will go on to say, "Oh my God, this must be just, painful for all of them." And he said, "Yeah, I mean, I think it's very painful for uncle." And I suddenly realized that I was actually talking more about the mother and the children, who are going to and I'm just saying from the lens that we wear in our, and I think with our deep conditioning and the rest of that, my heart immediately had gone out to obviously the children and the mother. And I believe in many ways, rightly so, because they also struggle when they have a partner who comes out. And I was obviously very concerned for their future and for this young lad who was 17 and how it is that he was dealing with his dad coming out at that point. And so the minute I said, "Oh, this must be very painful," my 17-year-old son's response was that, "Yeah, it must be very painful for uncle. Because imagine having to lead all these years, lead his entire life, not being able to come out to say who he really was. And so this must have been so suffocating, so painful for uncle." And I was just shocked with the 17-year-old's sheer empathy and very sort of demonstrated compassion for the father of his 17-year-old friend. And of course, we spoke about the children, and of course, we spoke about the mother, and we spoke about how difficult this is going to be for them to be able to deal with this, given the kind of society that we have. This is a taboo, especially for a married man who's going to now leave his children and his wife to be with his gay partner, and the rest of that. But notwithstanding that, I was just completely struck, and it really stayed with me how in the same conversation, I was talking about the pain of the family, and he was talking about the pain of the person who was coming out and who had suffered so many years of not being able to come and live his authenticity. And so I have to ask you this, and especially because you have children the same kind of age, is your own sense, and especially with the work that you do, across countries in this space, and you're a member of the community yourself, do you believe that the millennials, the Gen Zs, perhaps have a deeper empathy, perhaps have a lens that allows them to be able to accommodate this idea far more easily as compared to the past generations, and particularly those of us in our 50s today, and perhaps even in our 60s today, who at most times have not understood this phenomena very clearly, given societal expectations and societal conditions, as a result of which most of us have either been confused or very scared, hugely homophobic, in short. So give me a sense on whether you think there is the millennials, the Gen Z are more woke, are more accepting, are more integrating of this diversity.
I think the biggest difference, Sujaya, between my generation and the older generation and the new generation is the information. There is awareness, there is information. So that's it. The narrative is changing. So therefore, the information is changing, and therefore, I want to congratulate your son actually for what he
Yeah.
said. That's the biggest. It says a lot. Now it doesn't. We can't generalize, okay? But it says a lot about your parenting, the value system that he's been brought up around. So we have to take that credit as well. See, our generation, like I said, was shackled. We did everything, but we did it in hiding. Our parents pretended that we didn't have sex, we didn't kiss boys outside the home, we didn't go out to movies. We did everything, but we pretended. I have noticed that this generation, because I talk to now my friends of similar age,
Yeah.
and they say that your story, the way you have struggled and what you had to go through, has inspired me so much that I will make sure that my children don't have to go through it. I think my story teaches about unconditional love. That
Yeah.
when a child comes to a parent, for instance, that first thing, what do you do as parents in India and outside India? In India, what we do, you'll do, hi tauba, ye kya ho gaya, meri to zindagi barbaad kar di. This is Bollywood influence. We make it
Yeah.
all about us. A mother or a father will say, I have been cursed, I am diseased. Sorry, you are diseased. What have you? You brought shame to my family. So it's all about me,
Yeah.
me, me, me.
Yeah.
None of us sit and hold our children's hand and say, what are you going through? Let me first find out. You're in difficulty, you're going through challenges. Let me, whether I agree with it or not, is a different story. We don't
Yeah.
make it safe. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Whereas outside, some of my other friends who have had similar experience have shared differently, saying that no, we've listened. Even if
Yeah.
my child gets totally drunk sitting on the road, is at the cop station, I first go and help my child and then decide on what I'm going to do to my
Right.
child. Okay, so we don't do
Right.
that. So this new generation, if you ask me, has lived experiences that they can see. My story. There are many other stories that are out.
Right.
They can, the movies, I say Bollywood, for instance, or the OTT content has started shifting. You see, the shift is not about some man as a caricature, a relief in a film story, a
Yeah.
big plot,
Yeah.
and then one gay character who will make you laugh and you'll think it's funny, and you'll go
Yeah.
back home, and in your home, if you ever
Yeah.
have conversations about the LGBTQ community, you see what comments come out.
Yeah.
Typically, there will
Yeah.
be homophobic comments. So when
Yeah.
you're around that, your homophobia becomes internalized, which
Yeah.
basically means that I don't want to come out because
Yeah.
I'm going to be ridiculed, I'm going to be
Yeah.
judged. The younger
Yeah.
generation doesn't feel it that way. And
Mm.
again, I'm generalizing because I've now
Yeah.
traveled through quite a bit of colleges and business schools in India, for instance, and
Yeah.
outside. And I have done a few programs here in England for the younger generation, King's College, Nassau, UK, and I felt that they are very open to
Yeah.
learning. There are
Yeah.
some who are trollers; they will troll no matter what. It's
Yeah.
just it's just how people are. It's just their
Yeah.
upbringing. But
Yeah.
most people, the millennials, are very, very open. But I actually don't give kudos to them so much. I think that I expect with the new information they should be like that. I give
Right.
I congratulate the people of our generation and our older generation that they are accepting of us, because we have been brought up so homophobic that if I can sit with a person who's gay and not even worry about their sexual orientation, to me, that is the shift.
Right, right. So well said. So Rava, I'm going to try and take some of the comments which are in the box. There's some really lovely stuff here. We've got Aruna Vaz, and she's saying, so love what you said, Raga. Acceptance is so important. I'm just reiterating some of the very poignant, very lovely things that you said when we were talking to you. She's also asking you, are you and Nicola civil partners now, since civil rights are available in the UK? Hence, she's asking. And it is up to you if you want to answer this
Sure,
question.
sure.
Yeah.
Aruna Vaz, lovely to see you here. Thank you for joining in. Now, Aruna, we just to give you an understanding, there are civil rights, there's de facto relationship, there's civil rights, and then there is marriage. All three are available. So Nicola and I are not in a civil right partnership, nor neither are we married. We have what we call as a de facto relationship, because a de facto relationship gives you the rights, same rights. So, for instance, I have equal partnership here. So, if my assets, whatever assets we own equally. So, I don't really want to be in a civil partnership or a marriage unless I want to.
Yes.
And at this point, I don't feel the need unless it is from a pure legal point of view.
Right. Fair enough. Amita Karve is saying none of the policies work in India. It's the mindset that needs to be changed through cultural change. So true. Again, Aruna's out.
Sorry, Sujay, can I
Yes.
answer this? Amita Karve has made a
Yes.
very interesting point, and that is
Yes.
why, you said that I was an activist. I say more as an advocate, though, that what I do is I feel that this is so important. One is the mindset change, but mindset change also happens when the government will intervene and make this, have an anti-discrimination law, for instance. It is very
Mm,
important. It is when people will wake up and say, oh, I can't discriminate against this person basis their sexual
mm,
orientation. And
mm.
interestingly, human beings, understand law better than anything else. But I agree, attitude needs to change, mindset needs to change, and it
Yeah.
is changing.
Actually, I mean, I think in our context, and I speak a lot about this, which is compliance versus culture, because we do have regulation in some of the other areas as well. For example, the appointment of women on boards, or the entire policy around prevention of sexual harassment and the rest of that. And I think when you try and wear the culture lens, you understand that you may prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, but you're still not preventing sexual behaviors. And so you can still end up creating hostile environments at work where people find it inappropriate, because there's a culture that allows people to be inappropriate with each other and goes unchecked, which is the reason why a lot of the sensitization conversations need to take that in. So, this whole business of compliance versus culture, and I think I completely buy into what it is that Amita is saying here, because, if we don't change and shift the mindsets, there's no point having regulation around it. So even to your point on having a, regulation around anti-discrimination, I'm not sure how many people, I know what you're saying, that at least there is a law around it. You will still have some variation that can go unchecked in the law. It's not exactly what it is that the law is talking about, but a variation of that. So there is a long way to go on this mindset shift and behavioral
I
shift.
agree.
And unfortunately, what happens is there are more programs than and events, and a lot of that program and events can help create some degree of awareness, but it doesn't get taken seriously. People don't know how that translates into their behaviors every day. And I think that's what. So therefore, diversity and inclusion as a culture, vis-a-vis diversity and inclusion as a nice program to attend, or a nice sort of, it's a movement, and it needs lots of evangelists and many people to be able to individually question their own sort of deeply held values and beliefs and assumptions and conditioning and all of that. So this is very much my favorite theme as well, Raga, which is the whole
Yeah.
space of compliance versus culture.
Sorry,
Um,
Jay, again, sorry, I'm just going to add more because I totally agree with you and Amita. But look at us, look at our ecosystem that we grew up around. So we have a home and family values, different faith, different religion, different food habits, everything is different and different value system. Like I keep saying, our conversations around LGBT, I don't know how they are. In my house,
yeah,
we never spoke about it. Okay,
yeah,
while growing
yeah,
up, because we didn't know them.
yeah,
The
yeah.
term gay meant you were very happy. That's all, right? Yeah, right. And then you're talking about your school, right? That other environment, and then you're talking about your workplaces, and mostly workplaces and families. If you do a comparison, so you may be coming from a homophobic family, then you
Yeah,
go into a workplace which is now sensitized and is giving you information, is giving you all
yeah,
these dialogues and conversations. Imagine your mind. You are going to have to decide
yeah,
this is right or this is right. This is right. This is our India. This is what we go
yeah,
through. And that is so important, that for a person to then be independent and say, this I have learned as a child, but this I'm going to unlearn and I'm going to relearn as an adult.
yes,
This
yes,
is the most important thing, which is where the
yeah,
mindset will change. We can't
yeah.
blame
So well
our
said.
childhood for the rest of our lives.
Right, right. And you cannot give yourself the permission to stay in that confusion for the rest of your life as well. Because sometimes it can remain unresolved. And like you're saying, to unlearn and to relearn a new behavior, no matter what it is that you heard from authority figures as you were growing up and so on. So super stuff. So we've got Amita saying some more, and she's saying it's extremely important to look at the UAE labor law and see inclusivity, and also UAE being Islamic country, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and so on. I think some of these countries are doing some very significant work, also because they attract their melting pots for talent, like the UK is. And I think it's tremendous to see some of the Islamic countries also making the move to be able to use regulation and law to be able to sort of govern, sort of cultures of inclusion and respect for no matter who it is that comes into their country. So I think good points here. There is A. Prakash who's saying, and I'm going to try and take a couple of different people who's speaking here. Reminds me of a quote from Maya Angelou, who says, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So well said. Thank you, Prakash, for changing this, for posting this. And Vibhakar Ramtirkar says He's thanking both of us for insights into a different world. So thank you, Vibhakar, for attending this. Amita Karve, I agree with having laws, but implementation is equally important. We agree with you. Sean Fernandez says, how do we penetrate tier 2 and other cities? Individuals can rather receive much help and support here, but how can we help people who can't reach this support? You have any ideas at all? Because you have been in India for some time and
Yeah.
with your same sex partners. So give me a sense on that.
It's very interesting. Actually, the most acceptance came from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, by the way. So when I
Yeah,
was out to, on my book tour, and I was talking about Untold Lies, shockingly, the 800,000 people would turn up for my talks, and I have had such amazing love and respect. So I think it is, and they are far more open than
right,
sadly in certain tier 1. Because in tier 1, I think we're fed with so much information that we get confused. In tier 2, they're very simple. If you have a great story, if you live your life to, with authenticity, they'll accept you. It's about authenticity. It doesn't mean, again, like I say, when I say I generalize, it doesn't mean there's not the other side. But overall,
right.
I've had most of my fan following are 19-year-olds from tier 2 and tier 3. There is a lady, very well known author and a researcher called Ruth Vanita, and she has written many books on the subject. And if she has kind of put into her publication huge amount of stories of women or lesbian stories from these rural India. They don't care. They don't have a word called LGBT, right? In rural India, वो क्या कहेंगे? So they have no word. Two women want to get married, they will go to the temple and get married. Even there are instances of this, examples of this in rural India, and the priest has happily got them married, saying that I agree, marriage is between two spirits, it's two souls. It is not between a biological man and a biological woman. That is our rural India. So we actually have to learn from them. They don't have to learn from
Mm.
us.
Mm. Good points. Good point. I'm going to go to Rani Desai, who's here, and she's asking, apart from law and sensitization programs in corporates, the need is for a societal change to come in. Here, the societal leaders will play an important role in changing mindsets. Do you want to respond to this? She's saying that you need a large societal movement because
Yeah.
finally organizations are microcosms of the society, and a lot of societal leaders must talk about it and get integrated into this whole movement. So, give me your view on that.
Again, this is a very interesting point Rani Desai has made. But you know what we forget? This is how all my life I used to say, "Log kya kahenge? Society, society," because I was fed this rubbish
Hmm.
until I realized I am that society.
That's right.
Yeah. This othering that I was doing was not othering. There's no others. There is us. So as long as we can take responsibility for our own space and our own voice, that is enough. Because this one response, that is why I actually wrote the book, Sujaya. This is
Hmm.
one of the reasons I came out at 50. I could have
Yeah.
just sat in my armchair, had sipped glasses of wine, and
Yeah.
led a semi-retired life.
Yeah.
But it is important to know that it is important to be a voice, and we are that society. We are that society, and we will build that society, and we will change the narrative together.
That's right. Absolutely. Very well said. And I must say, I have that similar philosophies around the number of forums that can talk about this, the number of individuals who can do work in the space of DNI. I mean, the more the merrier. We need lots of work and lots of voices and lots of influencers. So, very much endorse what it is that you're saying here. The society starts with us. We are the society, and we are the people who are empowered to shape the world. And even if it's one team at a time, one group at a time, one masterclass at a time, one conversation at a time, so be it. That's how you kind of change and shift mindsets and get people. I mean, we've had people here saying thank you for sharing a perspective that I didn't have, or thank you for this insight. And that's how we kind of shift mindsets. So I think the society absolutely starts with us. Amita asking also also use examples relatable to your target group, like if they read religious books like the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or any such book. Place examples from there, such as she talks about Briyanada from Mahabharata or Shrikhandi
And
from Mahabharata as LGBTQ were there even then. And if one reads how these characters claim their own space and also ruled as kings for small kingdoms. So there are instances even in our mythology around it. And so well said, Amita, that this is not a new phenomenon. It's not something that we've stumbled upon today. And it's definitely not in the times of the millennials. It's always been there. And we may not have come out or had the courage to be able to talk so openly about it. And it's amazing how, whether you look at the Mahabharata or some of the old sort of Indian scriptures, they're not called ancient Indian wisdom for nothing. I mean, that they're full of
Yeah.
wisdom, and I think we've lost some of the wisdom over time.
Sujaya, people would constantly, my mother including, people who were close to me said, "You've become a Firang now. You live in New Zealand, so you become Firang, and that is why you're now, a lesbian." So they thought
Yeah,
I went to New Zealand, I drank that water or that glass of pure New Zealand water and wine, and I became a lesbian. That's what they
yeah,
said. Not realizing, Amita Karve is so true in saying this, so right in saying this. We have so much of information from our ancient scriptures that are examples of Shiv Parvati, taking a certain form, Mohini, taking Arjuna. There are lots and lots of stories of Shikhandi that talking about. She's talking about. There are lots of stories. All you have to do is to look up these stories, and you will know that we always had we had a kingdom, which was very inclusive.
yeah.
Transgender people, like somebody said, they were part of society. Now,
Right.
also, sorry, at this point, I must say, just in case we missed this, I think India also needs to understand, and I know that the intent is good. There's a huge difference between somebody's sexuality and
Yes.
somebody's gender. I
Hmm.
often get calls, Sujaya, saying that they want me to do something from the transgender community. I get questions like saying that, "Oh, you're a lesbian, so how come you have children? But you said
Hmm.
you have children. Are they your own or are they adopted?" Or they will say, "But you don't," because I wear saris quite a bit, and now although I have this look, I present myself as an LGBT as per the frame of reference that is put out by other people, and they would, if I were a side, saying, "But oh, you are from the LGBT community. You don't look like a lesbian." These kind of myths, and constantly
Yeah.
huge difference. I am a woman, born a woman. I love a woman. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
I don't have confusion about my gender.
Hmm.
Trans people or hijras, God bless them, and they have a much, much, much bigger fight than we have,
Yeah.
Sujaya, sadly.
Yes.
They are different. They are the
Hmm.
eunuch or the hijras, whatever labels are given, which rightly or
Yeah.
wrongly, that's the
Yeah.
trans community. They're different. They don't feel comfortable in their own gender, so they sometimes transition, sometimes they don't transition.
Right.
Huge difference. We have to learn these differences. We have to learn
Absolutely.
the new things that are coming up. Pronouns have become, important, right? People
Right.
want to call themselves he, him, or I had a conversation with somebody who are non-binary,
Yeah.
who call themselves they and them. Let's respect that language as well. How
Absolutely.
do we? Hey, hello guys, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Language. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so use the right language.
Yeah.
Chairman, it's a chairperson. Simple
Yeah.
things if we do in our everyday life,
Yes.
that is
Yes.
society that we are actually changing, and we're making it
Yeah.
inclusive and equal.
Right. So well said. I'm going to go on to Raymond Lobo, and he's asking, with transgenders now gradually entering the workforce. It's also up on our screen. Yeah. Now with them gradually entering the workforce, unisex restrooms or spaces, reserved tables and canteens are now being standardized to give them their privacy. What was or should be the attitude of corporates towards employee uniforms, dress code? Why are trans persons most or almost always associated with the female gender only because of their past professions and so on? And how do we sensitize people to the masculine, macho side of transgender?
It's a question that you should ask a transgender person.
Hmm.
I think they will be more inclined to give you the right answer. I am not from the transgender community, so I will not do any justice to this.
Right,
All I say is, let's have an inclusive space. If we have people in our workplaces from the transgender community, if they are out, let's give them a space there which is safe, and which maybe they want a gender neutral toilet, for instance. Let's give
right,
it to them. If they want
right,
policies around same gender partnership that they're in, whether it
right,
is maternity or adoption leave, or that's giving insurance policies, let's provide
right.
that for them. Those are the basics first. But
Absolutely.
this question should be answered by a trans person for sure.
All right, fair enough. We've got Yashwant Chauhan saying here, acceptance is the powerful key for enabling mindset shifts in the society. Many thanks for sharing your story. My question to you is, what concrete steps can organizations, policymakers take to enable the culture of diversity, inclusion, equity, and belongingness for multiple stakeholders from the society? I know it's a broadish kind of question, but if you can give him an answer on this, what concrete steps can organizations or policymakers take to enable a culture of diversity, inclusion, and equity?
Yashwat, I think I have tried to respond to this in my other Q&A, but however, it's where first of all it starts at the top. The top management needs to admit and accept that there are LGBT people in your workforce. I've been to meetings, Sujaya, just as an example, where I have presented some speakers from the community, and the person has come turned around and said to me, "Oh, we don't need these speakers because we don't have such people or such problems in our workplaces," forgetting that as per the research, World Bank research, it is estimated that there are at least 5 to 7% of the workforce population is from the community. Now, it's a different story whether they're out or not out. People think that if you're presenting in a certain manner, LGBT presented, that means you are from the community. You'll be surprised to find how many of us are hidden. You will not even know our sexual preferences. So don't go by what people look like, by their appearance. Sexual orientation has no form. So that is number one. In terms of what companies to do, so like I said, top management start at the top, except start having policies in the organization, not just have policies on paper and give it in the HR manual, induction manual. It should be constantly, the dialogue should happen, conversation should happen. Bring in people like you, Sujaya, your organization, to
Yes.
sensitize, to have conversations around DE and I. What is the difference? Why are we talking about diversity? What is equity? What is equality? What is inclusion? Understand the differences. Make sure that there are certain structure in place, policies in place, like I said about maternity leave, or talking about insurance. We can't even, for instance, Nicola and I, when we lived in India, we wanted to buy a house and we wanted to open a bank account, joint bank account as partners, and we wanted to get a mortgage. Not accepted. We were not. Now apparently banks are beginning to start looking reviewing this because they realize the value of the pink dollar or pink rupee. They know people from the community are quite well settled, some of us, right? And that we have the disposable income, so it's a huge opportunity. So start doing basic things, start having dialogues. That's my Create allyship programs. People love being on programs. Create champions within the organization. Really, speak a bit sarcastically around that, and I should refrain from it because I think it's become fashionable to know somebody from the LGBT community. I'm saying it's okay for you if it's fashionable. Let's do it together. Support the community. Create allyship programs where allies go and talk on behalf of the LGBT community, and then they go back home. Remember, we all go back home to our families, and then we can change our families, whether the future generation or the generation before us, our parents.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure, a couple of things that are coming up here, which are very interesting. Namita is asking, how can an organization attract LGBTQ talent? I think you've got part of that answer already, where Raga mentioned that a lot of them are already inside your organization. So, one part is to be able to attract them from outside, and the other is to create a culture inside, so more people have sort of the experience of safe space and have the gumption to be able to come out internally. But
Sujay,
Rama, you still want to answer that question?
yeah,
Yeah.
Sujay, I'll give my favorite example to those who are interested in storytelling, anecdotes. Okay, there is a program called The Voice on television, which is basically a talent program. I love that program for one big primary reason. So you go on The Voice, you perform on stage, individual performance, and then there is your stage one, stage two, stage three, and you go into in the finals. The interesting part about this program, this particular show, is that when you perform on stage, the judges back is towards you. So you don't see the judges don't see the performer. And as soon as the judges listen to the voice and they like the voice, they have to press the buzzer. And then the chair turns, and then they evaluate basis whoever has buzzed first, and they mentor that person to go into the different rounds. I love that program because many a times the judge will turn around and say, "Oh my God, I didn't know this voice came from you." It's always like a shock to them, because they may have thought, and I'm speculating here, that the person may have been young, old, of a different sex, different, whatever. So our unconscious bias is here, our frame of reference is here, and we normally recruit people basis our own frame of reference. I always tell people, do you use this formula in your recruitment process, where don't have the person's age, their marital status, their photograph, just judge them on the skills and talent that they bring in. You will be surprised how many people will be from the, not just the community, neutral people that we really bring in because of their skills and talent, not because of what you thought that college they went to was my favorite college, or I went to that college, so they will be super fantastic, those things. So I think that is important for us. Even so, I don't know who asked this question. Was it Amita or someone else?
I think it was Namita who asked this question.
Namita. So Namita Singh, thank you. So I think we have to have, there will be many already in the organization. I said 5 to 7%. Some people have said even up to 15%, but the World Bank figures say 5 to 7%. So we could recruit more people if we are neutral and we are not biased.
Right. And I think Amita has a fantastic thing that she's saying here. How does it matter to the society that what you do as an LGBTQ? What she's simply saying is, how does it matter if you are an LGBTQ? It's important if you're good at what you do. And I guess all organizations must have posh policies which are more inclusive. And I think that, Amita, you kind of hit the nail on the head. That's what this whole movement's about, that your sexual orientation has nothing to do with your competence. And therefore, to be biased against or to be discriminated against is so unfair. Also, to not be taken seriously because you're part of the LGBTQ community, or to conversely call anyone who's effeminate someone who's from the LGBTQ community. This is all so demeaning. And it's not a joke, and it's not funny, because it costs people their careers, and it hurts people, and it pains people, and it creates hostile environments for people, creates discomfort for talent, and a lot of them will eventually be disenchanted and move away.
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying here, that how does it matter? This is about competence, this is about your ability to contribute, and therefore more people who are inside an organization who belong to the LGBTQ community and who are already performing well professionally must come out, so that you have greater role models who are from the community, who are performing well already, who've already been accepted inside the organization, who make the job easier for the others, so that we start like a sane and a mature society, accepting everyone and everyone's competence and everyone's creativity and everyone's brilliance, and create these cultures where work becomes a joy. And all this stuff that we're talking about in the context of engagement and innovation becomes a reality, because we're creating environments where what you can bring in as contribution is what matters the most, rather than what it is that is your orientation, which frankly is actually no one's business. And I'm ever so glad that you're pointing this out, which is, what does it matter to society if you are from the LGBTQ community? And the only reason why it should matter is so that you can make life easier for this community, so that for all these years of taboo and discrimination and marginalizing this group, we integrate them and bring them back with joy, because it's so unfair to discriminate when they are as talented, if not better. I don't know how many of you have friends from the community, including the one that we're interviewing right now. They are exceptionally talented people. And so if we're actually not integrating them, we're actually losing great talent. And I have to say this, everyone's talented, but I have to say, because we're discriminating against this group, or we've not done much work in this space, this group is exceptionally talented. We are losing the opportunity to integrate a very talented person into our workforce.
Sujaya, I must add, research, for instance, shows that, forget about just the sexual orientation. If we don't take our full self into an organization,
Yes.
they have actually done research on this, that there is 30% productivity loss. So they're saying that if you take your full self, let's say I'm a happy person, I know when I go home, I'm safe, and I go to my workplace, I'm safe, and I can be who I am, I'm focusing on my work, I'm doing everything that I have been hired to do and more.
Yeah.
Imagine the productivity of the organization. It's a win-win at both levels, for the organization and for the individual. Sadly, the opposite happens, because you go into a workplace, no matter how many policies, like Amita said, you have in place, you're not treated well, because it is made up of individual with individual mindset. So you're not taking your entire self to work, you're taking a little bit of yourself to work, you're hiding a little bit of yourself away. The mental health, you can imagine. the mental
Yeah.
health issues, the person, I have been through it. I have been through horrible. You said I was talented and I've done well for myself, and a lot of people call me successful. I can assure you, I only touched 10% of myself because I was always scared. And I really think if I was given the opportunity to be my whole self, I don't know what I would have done. But it's not too late. At 50, I started.
Lovely, super. And keep up with that. Raga, I'm going to move back to our conversation because I
Sure,
still
sure.
have some questions I have not asked. We did have instances, and I called it out earlier in the conversation as well, where we've had individuals come out on social media. They haven't yet told their employers, perhaps haven't told their families yet. They've just simply come out on social media, letting people know, their authenticity and their reality, and asking for support to be accepted in their whole as their whole selves, and putting their whole selves out there. So my question to you is, what can organizations do to be able to support such individuals? At most times I've found people who handle human resources, or the line managers who are leading these teams, while may have a lot of empathy and compassion for the individual coming out, don't know how they're supposed to manage this in the context of the individual, in the context of the team, and in the context of the individual and his manager. So give us a sense on someone coming out. How can organizations prepare themselves around this?
See, first of all, somebody's coming out is their prerogative, right?
Yeah,
Now, who do we, if we want to share something which is extremely personal to us, who do we go to? We will go to immediate family, or we'll go to our best friend, or we'll go to somebody that we trust and we feel safe with. And I keep using the word safe. If the individual has come out on social media and has not told anybody else, it says a lot about their family, their the society that we've created, and the workplace that they go to, right? Otherwise, they
right.
would have come out to somebody. So I think that we have to continuously work on this as a society, as an organization, as families, that we continuously need to build a place of safety and trust. So that is the first thing. Now, if let's say they come out in the social media and the organization has got to know about it, I don't know what they would be doing on that person's social media anyway. But and it's like saying that I'm straight. Hey, today I'm straight. How does it matter? Why should the organization feel responsible for that person's personal journey unless the person wants to come out? That's the other thing, Sujaya. Before I actually answer this question, I want to remind people that let's say somebody comes out to you, like Sujaya, I meet you for a drink and I say, Sujaya, I haven't shared this with anyone, but I actually am a lesbian, and my sexual identity I share with you. You have absolutely zero right to go and tell somebody else about it. I've come out to you, it's a story, but people do that. They say, that Raga, that she's now a lesbian and now she's come out. People think it is cool to do that, thinking that they know it's not cool, right? That's one thing that people must remember. So if that person has come out on social media, that means they made it public. The organizations need to make sure that the next day when they go into the office, they're not discriminated, that
Yeah,
people are sensitized, or they're
yeah,
made to feel welcome, not any different. Nobody needs to
yeah,
be sent a memo all around the office
yeah.
saying now Raga D'silva is now a lesbian. She's come out on, so let's be kind to her. Let's show compassion. No, just make her feel safe, like somebody else said, right? That how you make that person feel is important. Have policies in place. Nobody should get away with calling me names or abusing me, because they know that if they did, there's somebody in the organization who's going to take serious action against them. That's the kind of stuff we need to do. That's all. Nothing else. Zero tolerance policies. Nothing else needs to be done. And keep having dialogues. Keep having dialogues. That's the most important. When I go home and there's a certain kind of environment that is created for me, I want to go home. Otherwise, I would rather go on, Bombay local trains. And I've done that.
Mm.
I used to go Borivali to Churchgate to Borivali 10 times because I didn't want to go home. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel safe, you know. So if you
Mm.
want your family to come home, your somebody from the community to come home and feel safe, give them a beautiful, magical home.
Well said. Raga, I'm going to go on to ask you, what is your message overall for the following, essentially, your own experience has been so incredible, and you've just been, like I said, so generous to be able to share it. But people want to, the ones who want to come out, what is your advice or your message to them in terms of how they should manage this coming out with parents and spouses? How should they be handling their employers and bosses? And I'm talking with the ones who've not just come out on social media, but the ones who want to come out and want to let people know. How should they typically handle this with? And we're going to create the key stakeholders around, right? Basically,
Sure.
it's your parents and your spouse, if you are already married, your employer, your children, if you have children, and other LGBTQ persons. You know what I mean? You could have people in the community whose support and help you want. How would you want to be able to draw that in the process of wanting to come out? If you don't want to
Sure.
tell other members of the LGBTQ community, it's another thing. Maybe it's your partner. But how should one handle this with various stakeholders? What should they be telling each one of these groups? And because
Sure.
you've been through this incredible experience, can you tell us a bit about how do you manage? What do you actually say to your partner? What do you actually say to who you're going to part with now? What do you say to the children who won't have to experience a new life because you want to come out? And I think this is part of the dilemma that people within this community experience, which is the act of coming out is in their minds highly devastating for different groups of people. So tell us
Sure.
how it is that they can most sensitively manage these groups.
For the parents, Suja, it's a very good question, actually. For the parents, when I came out, I wish I had time with my mother now and I would have done it differently, that I would have sat her down and told her. I want the parents to know that it is not your fault. There is nothing that you did that made the person or made me a lesbian. It is how I was born. It's in my DNA. So that's the first thing. If you're married, I know a lot of people, Sujaya, sadly, who are in marriages, like the example that you gave earlier, my own story, who are in marriages who are not able to share this with their partners, and they live this double life, and they live a life which is not, it's quite dark, I'm sure. So I tell
Yeah.
them it's okay to take strength from other lived experiences like ours, and it's okay to share. Be kind, and you have to tell your spouse that it is not about you. This is one thing. I have huge respect for my ex-husband, because he told me one day, he said, when people started telling him that, oh, you were not man enough, no, things that people say to people, right? Really horrible stuff. He turned around and he said that this is not about me, this is about her, so let her be. And that is it. It is not about you. It doesn't say that you were a bad husband or you're not a good wife. It just simply says that person has taken a long time for acceptance. So just hold their hand, love them. Of course, whatever decisions have to be made has to be made as a family, like I did. You can't skip that. That's a responsibility. But you have to live your truth, even if it is the truth with your own family. You ask about how to, with children. You know, is children is, I think, one space you cannot pretend. We cannot pretend with children. How many times have I heard over the last 30 years of my life, we are in this marriage for the sake of the children? That's the biggest rubbish. Take that out of your system. Children want love. Children want peace. Both kinds of marriages where there is absolute silence, we don't talk to each other, or there is fights because we have to talk to each other and fight. Both don't work for children. If you want to bring up grounded children, be grounded yourself, because I learned that for me. People said to me, you could have been married and you could have had something on the side. Really, because a
Mm.
lot of people do that. I refuse. I said, if I don't feel happy with myself, I will not be able to bring up a happy family. And to me, my ex-husband is also my family. I still look after his emotional needs because he's my family. So we are a family. We may not live together, we're separated, we're divorced. So it is important to show compassion. It's also important to know that your parents, for instance, sometimes you have to be a parent to your own parent.
Mm.
This is what Devdutt Patnaik also said to me. You have to be a parent. You have to remember that they don't know everything either.
Yeah.
Children are your biggest parents. They know much more than we give them credit. My children,
So
for
well
instance,
said.
yeah, my children, and I'm sure you have the same
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we went to the supermarket, which is just next door. My son works at the supermarket. He was beamed, and he said to this one of his managers, he said, "These are my mums." He was so happy about it. Not one ounce of shame or guilt or prejudice, judgment. And his manager said, "Oh, so lovely to meet you. I've heard so much about you both." You know, so this is it. So let them be, let children be. Do not pretend with them, because they will see through it, and that cycle will continue in their lives. We don't want that. To bosses, I've said that already. If we have employers, we have managers, please be kind, please be open, please be accepting, please be inclusive. We are not any different. I swear, I type with the same fingers like you type. Really, I go to the grocery store and take a bag and I put stores. I do everything the same way that you do. So there's nothing different. Just treat us with respect as you would treat anybody else. Be a great employer, be a safe employer. And is there anyone, to the LGBT people, to my community, I say, hold your head high, like I hold my head high, and live. Live your life as truthfully as possible for you, not for anybody else. And our narrative is changing one story at a time. And be that story. That's why I say be part of that changing narrative. And as I always say, Sujaya, closets are for clothes, not to hide your truth.
Well
Let's,
said.
yeah,
Well
truly.
said. Well said. And I think, we need dollops of this. And like you rightly said, throw out and declutter from the closet as quickly as we can. So we've got Vivek Pradhan. I'm just taking a few more comments because we do have time. And so Vivek is saying human beings by nature are biased due to our conditioning and our scripting. Being conscious about this bias and controlling one's impulse and responding in the right manner is what we need to do. So well said, Vivek. Can't agree more. Um, we've got Beanie Rutella who's saying this is really an inspiring session. So
Thank you.
thank you, Raga, for that. Yashwant here saying it's important to sensitize people to appreciate talent from diverse communities for the larger good and unlocking full business potential. So true, Yashwant. This is there is a business case for this as well, which is that you will
Mhm.
not only widen your talent pool, you will bring in happy people. This is the real engagement we're actually talking about, and all that innovation that we're talking about actually converts when you have happy people who invest in creative problem solving. So bringing in that diversity and that creativity is what's going to make us more innovative. So everyone who's talking about innovation, you need to bring in diverse mindsets. We have too much of groupthink within organizations, and we need to be able to bust some of that. Um, Yashwant again says that he's agreeing with me. He's saying talent has no linkage with your individual and particularly sexual preferences. Organizations have to focus on diversity hiring. Atira cannot agree with you more. And if you have challenges on being able to find the right diverse talent, please reach out to us at Diversity Balance Hiring, which is what the Women Leadership Forum of Asia is doing to be able to support people who are saying we want diverse talent, but we can't find them. And then, of course, I think we've got Aruna saying organizations should talk about LGBT throughout the year and not only during Pride Month. And I couldn't agree with you more, Aruna. This is my problem with the way in which this movement is going within organizations at this time. It's better than not doing anything at all. But, it seems to be moving into the direction of celebrating days and months and all of that rather than working on culture and mindset shifts. And if we've done with our weeks and days and all of that, that's great. I mean, that's wonderful because you create awareness around many things. You bring in new ideas, you get them as a community to learn around set of new behaviors or start experimenting with new behaviors. But there is no replacement for mindset shift, and to see this movement as a culture change intervention within organizations. All right, Shalisha has a question. To give some examples of how you have handled people who don't understand equity, inclusion, diversity, and it may give a view that shows denial, judgment, or disgust, even. Give us examples of real language one may use to start a conversation while retaining the dignity of the LGBTQ person and also the judging person. So, how do we what she's saying is that there's disrespect in a way, and how do we manage the person showing disrespect and also uphold the dignity of the LGBTQ community movement and so on? Rama, do you want to respond to this? Can you
Sure,
give us
sure.
examples of
Thank,
how do we handle
sure.
people like
Thank you, Salaja. Sometimes it's often not about disrespect. I think most people don't come from the place of wanting to show disrespect. The intent is always good. Their ignorance. Mostly people are ignorant. They don't know. They think that there is a certain way that they have to speak with an LGBT person. Actually, there's no certain way. I mean, you and I are speaking normally. You're not waiting and thinking, okay, this is the way I should speak to Raga. It should be just normal. That's the whole thing, mainstream. There is no particular way of speaking. However, if somebody comes and tells you that I'm non-binary, for instance, we don't know what non-binary is. Do you know what non-binary is? I didn't know. Basically, somebody who, when somebody says I'm non-binary and my pronouns are they and them, whether they are presenting themselves as a male or a female, please be respectful. So they are telling you that they should be called they, and when you're referring to them, and they should be called them. You can't say, and he said this, because he's saying, I'm not he, I am they and them. So that is one way of dealing with that. So these days, in the community, while it is getting very, very confusing for even for me, it is important if somebody talks about pronouns that you show that respect. There is no other way that you show respect to an LGBT person as you show respect to any other individual. Now, I have had lots of instances where people have, like I said, come to me and thought I was a transgender person because they haven't understood. I am never rude to anyone. I say it to them very kindly. I will sit with them or talk to them, and I show equal compassion for them as they show towards me, because the intent is good. Somebody actually has taken the effort to ask me or to say something about DE and I. So I say, this is not right. This is how you should be talking about it. There are times when during the Pride month, I was very vocal about it. I got fed up. Hundreds of messages every day, people inviting me to be on a panel, and I knew that the moment that 31st June ended, that next day they would forget us. And it is something, and that's when I say that I'm happy to have allies, but make sure that is also respect. This is respect. Respect is that, like Aruna said, pride should be celebrated, or we should be celebrated throughout the year. Don't wait for June and show me a sense of tokenism. I'm not interested in that. However, I'm also happy that organizations are encouraging it and people are there championing it. So that also is a big deal for us. Now, how do you make sure that we, like, from the LGBT community point of view, if anybody comes to any one of us and they say something that is derogatory or disrespectful, because it is at the end of the day a language perception, right? We perceive it that way. Please be kind. You want people to be respectful towards you, and you want to teach people, then teach them kindly. Don't get into a fight. A lot of people get into fights, Sujaya. How dare you
Yeah,
do this? How dare you say that? Not realizing the other person actually didn't mean bad, meant well.
right.
Yeah.
Right. I think some of this healthy, sort of, if you want to call it that, arguments or alternate perspectives are useful in this journey of discovery and understanding each other better, and
Yeah.
understanding some of these complexities better if we've not been exposed to them or don't have a clear understanding of them. But with respect and with compassion, and the intentions got to be sort of kindness and wanting to understand. And I think that some of these healthy conflicts are useful in our arguments for and against and whatnot, which kind of makes all of this so rich, and this whole process of discovery so meaningful. So
Yeah.
I think with that, I want to be able to bring this conversation to a closure. We're just a little past 6 o'clock, but this has just been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Raga, for spending the time, for having the patience to be able to answer so many questions, but most of all, for sharing your own personal story and inspiring so many people. So thank you for that, and I'm going to thank the audience. You've been wonderful, very active audience. They're asking lots of questions and all of that, and great show of curiosity. And we'll keep the in conversation format of learning going, because it's ever so powerful. So it's been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful speaking to you, Raga. We called it 50 and out, and I must say you've inspired so many, I'm sure, in the audience or otherwise. We will play the recorded version through for people who couldn't attend. So keep inspiring, keep writing, and keep being your wonderful, authentic self. So with
Thank you,
that,
Sujaya. Really, thank you. Thank you for the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. It's an honor to be here. And I'm 50 and totally out now. And that's my handle as well, at totally out now. And I
nice.
encourage people, Sujaya, to be totally out, not just about just from the community. It's
Yeah.
very, very, very dangerous to hold lies inside. Speak the
Yes.
truth, live the truth, and live the magic. And really, life is
Lovely.
magical.
Lovely. And you're just so inspiring in general, whether or not people are from the LGBTQ community, to be your authentic self, put yourself out there, notwithstanding the repercussions. I know this has been a painful journey, particularly someone who comes from our generation, where we seldom ever understood what this was really all about. And I think it's wonderful to be able to come out, inspire so many, and to do this even after having been married at a time, having children, having so many other people around. And I think it's a very inspiring story of courage. It's a very inspiring story of compassion, of kindness, most of all to ourselves. And we can give compassion if we're compassionate to ourselves to begin with. So I'm so glad that you kind of inspire us with that, Raga. And thank you ever so much for agreeing to come here, for sharing your stories. All of you who've been on this call, on this conversation, you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for joining us here today. And do share, the recorded versions with your colleagues, friends. We need this dialogue for the community. We need it for the society, and we all have the power to shape the society around us. So thank you, everyone. Take care, Raga, and thank you, Suneet, Rupali, everybody in the back end for bringing this event together. And all of you, stay in touch with us. Join the movement called the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. Reach out to the volunteers should you want memberships. Use the DNI Academy well for you and your employees and your friends, and spread the good word around. The certification program is important for you in terms of capability building. And reach out to, if you're looking for diverse talent and you want help, reach out to the Diversity and Balance group. They'll be more than happy to help you. Take care. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, everyone. Thanks, Raga.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Sujaya. Lovely.
Okay. Bye-bye.